Welcome to another Halloween countdown. Well, sort of. Bats may be symbolic in celebrating the creepy holiday, but it can be revered any time of the year, whether it be insect control, pollination, cave preservation, or they simply are very magnificent creatures. With October looming closer, I decide to take a step in between and highlight my favorite bats, or in this case, Chiropterans in video games. No one has ever done a list like this before, and it'd be interesting to take in their spectacular flight, while also their blind eyes and reliability sensing things through sonar. They're the most interesting and one of the most vital creatures that Earth has to offer. Also, if you happen to be a chiroptophobic like Panthro or Ace Ventura, I suggest you leave now. So grab your bat wings and sharp fangs, let's fly! Alright, let's begin this top 10 with an unlikely choice, which happens to be from a game not many people are familiar with or don't give it enough credit. Carmine from Crystalis. Technically, he has been classified as a wizard, but he has characteristics that are more so closer to that of bats. First off, he wraps himself in his wings. Second, he can actually summon his annoying bat minions into battle constantly. He has insane warping abilities rather than relying on sight and sonar. And finally, he often resides in a cave of the first section within the outskirts of the town of Leaf. He almost even looks like a bat, and he's the first boss in the game, sadly not having any elements to distinguish itself, and is only fought once. He's the lowest rank belonging to Dragonia's finest four, which mostly reminds me of the elemental fiends in the classic Final Fantasy games, like 1 and 4. Speaking of which, the OG game and a little of Dissidia inspired me to make the semi-crossover. Carmine barely qualified for the list, but it's not every day a creature, let alone a Chiropteran, can summon its own kind into battle. Hopefully Carmine and Crystalis would get more positivity this time around. I was going to have the usual bats from Drakkhen for the list, as they're common, annoying, frequent as they can be found anywhere, and are endless within Hagken's castle. But the skull bat stood out to me the most. Besides, having an actual skull and a Chiropteran just screams Halloween and coolness. They can often be found during the night in the overworld within a constellation of stars. And by the time you see them move and hear that eerie jingle, a blank text box pops up for some reason, and you get random encounters. One of them is indeed the skull bat, and for a Chiropteran, it has some decent accuracy with its falling arrows. Sometimes you can even encounter them in a more irritating basis within the desert. The party must be constantly on the move, and just like any aerial enemy, it's often taken down by archers or magic. Otherwise, simply just
Run your ass off.
Aside from the nerve-wracking lions, cobras, ravens, and the awesome blade bats, the skull bat seems to be the most distinctive, and perhaps the most dangerous. Thankfully, they're encountered for a brief period of time and aren't often taken down unless you got a high level. Thus, all these traits barely make the Skullbats qualify for this list. Now, most devils have the cliché look of a Chiropteran, like vampires and gargoyles, but they seem to be cute and recognizable this way, and the incubus from Actraiser appears to be one of them. As I stated in my Arctic levels, I mentioned Northwall as one of my all-time favorites, and one of the reasons was the easy boss within the first act. The incubus, or the merman flight to some, is pretty easy, at least compared to the Arctic wyvern. It's just a pale armored humanoid with wings flying over a freezing lake and dropping energy bolts into it. One touch of them in the air or the splashes causes damage, so they must always be avoided. That is if the master's to the left. If he's to the right, the incubus just changes flight path from the left, drop, and repeat the process. Plus it pauses at times. Doesn't sound like much, I know, but he seems to be a resistant to magic, as he's too small to be hit by stardust, and the aura is unreachable. It does require some fancy platforming and slashing in order to take him down. Incubus has a memorable boss fight and design, relating to both a devil that are mostly Chiropterans. But like I said, he's not the only one. The Keeses from the Zelda series. One of the most common and annoying enemies introduced in the Juggernaut. Ever since their debut in the OG game, they'd been a staple to the series. They always appear in caves and in dungeons similar to their real-life counterparts, always being nocturnal and residing in opaque places. They're small, but they can either be in swarms or by themselves, and are often very adaptable. They can be found in various environments. They fly sporadically, they target Link constantly, and they can be virtually taken down by anything, whether it be swords or items. They're not always the usual bare bones, as they have different elemental varieties such as being encoded in flames, ice, electricity, or shadow. Nevertheless, just like those infuriating Zubats in Pokemon, they can be found in nearly all dark places and are very prominent. Thankfully, some tend to pause or stay at rest as long as Link isn't too close, though others just pop out of nowhere and unleash your fury. The only game they never appeared in is in Zelda 2, as agonizing as that black sheep is. But within every other game in the cluster mug, you better make sure you save your sanity with these cunning critters. Another cliché though cute example of a demon embodying a Chiropteran is the final boss of Joe and Mac, the Red Demon. The final boss has always been an iconic moment in the first game I had beaten. After Joe, or if you're Mac as player 2, enters the mouth of that T-Rex snake, he goes through its hard stomach and reaches the pumping heart. Therein lies the Red Demon. Aside from the blank gray flatheads, I kinda grew fascinated by it. Just by its charm aside from its bullying black, and its various skills like its swift flight patterns, conjuring a doppelganger of your unplayed partner, pitchfork stabs, and reverting to his bluish counterpart. in which he becomes a sort of pyrokinetic and warps around constantly, like Carmine. I don't know why demons usually take shape of Chiropterans, but I like this chibi style. Actually, the Red Demon's environment and battle gave me the inspiration of my own monster, the Heart Devil, aka the Diafol Galon, an enemy I made up for Season 5 of Sleepy Hollow. If only I can find that scary demon from that old PC game. I just adore its charm and skills, and the experience on beating my first game, so it's no wonder he was close to the top 5. While I wasn't too thrilled about X5, courtesy of the Great Clement and Fawful's minion, I was still happy it had its own Chiropteran Maverick. Finally! Dark Dizzy, also known as Dark Necrobat, has many traits related to an actual bat. Whether it be his design of wingspan and ears, clawed feet, his rows of fangs, and can drain the life of a Reploid much like a vampire. And he tends to squeak a lot and dislikes light much like a real Chiropteran. He's also known as the Forgotten Soldier of Darkness, and appears to hate underestimation much like me in a lot of ways. His flight pattern's not too sporadic and is often predictable, but watch out for his Dark Wave, Drain, Dark Hold, and Batten Bones. Just like Carmine, he too summons his own kind. In this case, small decoy mechalanoids that come in swarms and provide as obstacles to inflict the enemy, and they're shaped like bats, much like Dark Dizzy. Such an interesting choice, despite his nihilism, and he seems to be the only bat Reploid of his kind, as far as I know anyway. What a unique and awesome addition to the list. Keep on flying high, Necrobat. I haven't forgotten about you yet. Speaking of things that are underappreciated, anyone remember Aero the Acrobat? No? Well, why not? Anyway, as the star of his own series, Aero is a very neat red Chiropteran to play with. He's employed to run his own circus and prevents his enemy, the evil clown Edgar Ector, from shutting it down. Also, he happens to be a pun relating to an acrobat intent. His platforming takes a while to get used to, with his ability to drill jump into the air for a short distance, and nosedive onto enemies and platforms. And unlike many Chiropterans on this list, he was made in America first instead of Japan. By creating warp zones after completing tasks like riding roller coasters, making blocks dissipate, and overthrow the psychotic envious clown. Still, he and Zero the kamikaze squirrel really rattle Aero's wings. And he does have a love interest in Ariel. Sunsoft did a great job inventing a unique platform mascot, having the creator David Siller to develop him as a bat from a human and create unique concepts by his son Justin. But just like the neglected Dark Dizzy, Aero always was. A third main installment was never released. Universal preferred Crash Bandicoot since it was more popular than Aero. Capcom, the creator of Dark Dizzy, denied another Chiropteran, and it had long been abandoned when Metro 3D canceled those after the port to the Game Boy Advance. God, I hate when promising mascots get overshadowed. Ever since I was young, curiosity got to me as I found a cartridge of Aero the Acrobat 2 for the Super Nintendo in my parents' first mom-and-pop shop. I didn't get far, but I adored the small fry. While Aero has always had the curtain shut in his face, they'll remain open within my heart. Of course, the epic female Chiropteran from Sonic just craves to be on here. Rouge the Bat rocks. The jewel thief mercenary shall bring the other bats to hell, and she can surpass them all with her ferocity, sassiness, her incredible skills of flight, combat and treasure hunting, and loyalty. She does seem to be more like a rogue anti-heroine, always out for herself and getting whatever the hell she wants without relent. She has unsurmountable devotion and always remains true on her personal desires. Actions do speak louder than words here, especially since her speech tends to be alluring. Ever since I first encountered her in Sonic Adventure 2, I was on the fence with her. Though it was interesting when she tended to grow a crush on Knuckles, while settling her goals for claiming the Emerald Pieces. She always uses her superficial charm, intelligence, and personality for her own gains. Yet, she isn't always a narcissistic prick, and it is shown in Sonic Adventure 2 and Heroes to have a more heroic side. Team Darkwood might as well be my second favorite team next to Sonic, with her being the mediator for the emotionless Omega and the edgy Shadow. She was also willing to aid against more powerful foes like Metal Sonic, Black Doom, and even Mephiles, especially being a voice of assurance to Shadow and convincing Omega to do the same.
Shadow? Even if you believe everyone in the world will be against you, know that I'll always remain by your side. Remember that.
She might as well be similar to Samus for Metroid, proving to be a kick-ass independent feminist, and perhaps matching her exceptional skills, wits, and flexibility, even possessing thievery rivaling Rocket and Kasumi. Yeah, I said it, sue me. Also, where else have you seen a real Chiropteran with unsurpassable strength and physical prowess? Nowhere! Rouge is an outstanding Chiropteran in terms of appeal, having an ironclad will, and being a strong, versatile female to boot, as well as the mediator while also using her charm, combat, flight, and resourcefulness to her full advantage. As the great Clement says, it's hard to classify Aeons in Final Fantasy X, especially when it comes to Valefor. Whether it be a dragon or perhaps a bat on account of her wingspan and or the fact she is an elemental, contrary to those numerous serpents. Besides, having her name based on demonology for the Duke of Hell and the commander of 7 different legions of demons, not to mention having demons possessing traits to those flying rodents, she seems more bat-like, doesn't she? Anyway, Valefor, or in one case Batgirl, has been my favorite Aeon, like love at first sight. She seems to be the most gentle and simplest of them all, considering she's Yuna's first Aeon, during her tumultuous trials of a summoner. It's a good starting point in one of my favorite summer levels, and she happens to be more versatile than any Aeon, involving her various elemental abilities, always wiping out airborne enemies, and of course having her powerful non-elemental skills while refracting energy. She's also a cute, reliable, and versatile summon. Also, she kind of reminds me of the cockatrice boss from Super Ghouls and Ghosts. I don't know why. And if she were to be used against other summoners, I'm certain she can easily mop the floor with most of them, on account of her various elemental abilities. Valefor I consider for the most part to be a Chiropteran, and one of the best ones at that. Aside from being my favorite Eidolon in 10, she's unique, her design is striking and closely resembles to a bat, and she's the most reliable summon to use in active battle. Even saving Yuna from her fall from Seymour during his fake wedding. And she also has a great doppelganger to compensate, which seems twice as powerful than the original counterpart. Only one bat shall take flight and squeak to the highest degree of all Chiropterans. Alright, we count it down 10 to 2, but first, we gotta take a slight detour and list off the honorable and dishonorable mentions. Well, how about that? Noivern makes its way as my all-time favorite Chiropteran. This draconian Pokemon of Kalos has everything based off of bats, and is indefinitely spectacular at doing so. It's got an ominous look from head to tail, and it is very temperamental. It specializes in dark places to the point on ambushing its enemies if they dare to get close to one, whether it be by his fangs, claws, or even its sound waves. In fact, Noivern does indeed use sonar, both in communicating to others of its kind, while also making victims dizzy if it's a conflict. And it's powerful enough to crack boulders with such a magnitude that it can attack all enemies as deadly as Valefor's energy rays. Without a doubt, it's a mashup between Noise and Wyvern, and it is a dragon flying type, yet it still possesses special Chiropteran abilities. Besides, it and its pre-evolution Noibat are the first Pokemon to have flying as a primary type in conjunction with another. Unlike them though, they tend to be omnivores, and even giving a fruit can make them gentle despite their vicious demeanor. Hell, its concept's based on the fruit bat and leaf-nosed bat, and its Japanese name Onbon is a name consisting of bat, noise, and wyvern. Noivern's concepts, sinister design, abilities and echolocation, being an omnivore, residing in caves and ambushing enemies in the darkness while being predatorial and temperamental. Seriously! Noivern is definitely the unstoppable leader for all bat Pokemon in the entire Juggernaut. And just reaching the top spot makes it all the more special. I swear, Noibat would be one of the Pokemon I'd catch almost instantly, and it's so worth it to finally evolve it through vigorous training. I'm the Ekron Rider. Bats and Chiropterans are freaking awesome, and Noivern is just a prime example of one. I'll see you all next time for my next Halloween list as I count down my favorite undead enemies.
Take that, you winged spawn of Satan! Die, devil bird! I'm okay.